How is everybody doing tonight? Welcome back to another episode of Boys in the Zone. I'm your host, EJ Savage, and tonight we have a fun episode, another fan form episode. And the thought process behind this stuff was just getting in some Cowboys fans that don't typically have an outlet. Obviously, Prescott, he does. He runs his own podcast as well with his co host, but that typically don't have their own shows into one space to talk about the Cowboys and get a feel of the pulse of the nation, really. So, should be a fun show. Super excited to get all these guys in here and talk some ball. So, first and foremost, let me introduce all these guys. CJ, how are you doing tonight? And tell people where they can find you, real quick, man.
So CJ, my stage name is Big Nasty. You can find me at Big Nasty Official on Twitter. And I rap, I make music. Yeah, I can tap into that.
And most importantly, though, he is a Cowboys fan. So that's why we had to bring him in. I mean, dual talent. He can spit some bars for us here after the show, but right now it's the Cowboys portion of the show. Then we got Prescott over here, the co-host of Victory Formation Podcast. What's up, my man?
Hey, what's up? Yeah, so we're brand new. We only have about 4 episodes out, so we just started it up. I got tired of all the shock jocks out there, the Stephen A. Smith. I'm like, I just want some normal people that talk cowboy stuff. So we decided to do it on our own. Yeah, you can
There you
catch
go.
us on VF Pod BTH. That's Beyond the Huddle. So VF Pod BTH on Twitter.
There we go. And we got my guy Kai001 in the building. What's up, crew? And then we got my guy Jeff Hollis. Evening, guys. And our last guest right here, the Urban Cowboy. How you doing tonight, man? And let them know where they can find you as well.
Yeah, tonight I'm doing better than I deserve. Always fun to talk some Cowboys. Really, I'm just on Twitter at the Urban Cowboy. Kind of joined them not too long ago, mostly just like to talk trash a little bit on the internet and be hopeful with all the other Cowboy fans across the nation. So
There you go. There you go. So our first question and probably the biggest news that's come out of Cowboys land here recently is Mike McCarthy being retained. It seems as that he's going to have to play or coach, should I say, on the remaining 1 year on his contract. How are you guys feeling about that? Do you feel like he's the coach to take us to the Super Bowl, or kind of have you seen enough from him? What's your opinions and feelings? We'll start with Prescott down there.
Man, so I'm in the minority right now, I guess, but I like McCarthy. I think he's a good coach. Of course, he has his warts, things that he can fix, do better. But I think, like, say we have somebody who's closer to being good and closer to being bad. He's much closer to being good. He has a few time management issues. I think his biggest thing in my eyes is probably the discipline. Like, we have so many untimely penalties going throughout the season. And it just seems like they don't make it a priority. Like me, I have a feeling that if Jimmy Johnson had the penalties we had like the first 5 games, somebody would have been cut like a sacrificial lamb, something crazy like that. But Mike's just like, oh, don't worry about it. Just play harder next time. I think that they love him because of that. But at the same time, they don't feel fear if they mess up in the game. I think you got to have a healthy balance of that. And so I think Mike McCarthy is pretty good. And I think he can get us there. I really do. I just think that he needs somebody to help him. He needs to turn over the Call of Duties again. Find him a young Shanahan tree type person and give those over to him and let him just focus on coaching so he can focus on time management, managing the team, and let them focus on calling the plays and he can put his input in there. But that's how I feel. I think we'll be all right, especially with him under the gun, knowing that I'm coaching for my job this year. That motivates a lot of people, knowing, man, if I don't do good, I'm out. They might not even hire me on another team if I suck this year.
Well, you said that adding a Shanahan kind of coaching tree, OC, do you think that kind of defeats the purpose of bringing him back, knowing that that would be the third year in a row Dak Prescott would have to learn a new offense? Or do you kind of feel like, hey, what's working is the Shanahan offenses, and we gotta cut our ties and our losses with this West Coast thing, and kind of go into this tree and get to the promised land because of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I would say bring in a West Coast guru. Let me put it like that. So we don't have to learn a whole new offense. Bring in a West Coast guru because I think the offense worked because we saw it this year. They were just demolishing people left and right. And even when it wasn't working, they would get back on track later on in the game, or some parts they'll start picking up. So if he can bring somebody in that's a West Coast guru, someone from who is it, the Walsh tree, someone like that, and bring them in with some new concepts, new wrinkles, and do it like that, so Dak doesn't have to learn a whole new offense. I think that might be a better step than getting a Shanahan guy.
Okay, we got some chat from Jeff Hollis here. He's saying exactly. He also needs them better prepared for big games. To say we weren't ready again, that just can't be how it is. Speaking on Mike McCarthy, so we're gonna go to CJ here, and your opinions on Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones retaining him, man.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Prescott. The 1-year deal was cool. That should put a little pressure on him. I feel like if we make the necessary moves for running back, that offense is going to look way better because we're going to have someone who can actually perform at the running back position. And I feel like I feel good about it, to be honest. This was his first year calling the plays, and you guys saw what happened. It was a really good year for Dak, and yeah, I just feel good about it overall. I honestly feel like he's not even the person that people should be looking to when it comes to what we need to get better. So yeah.
For sure. And then so I guess you're going on the side of it's more of the players and the coach. Is that understood correctly, CJ?
Nah, I'm talking more so the defensive side of our team. I think our offense is good. We just need a better backfield. But as far as like overall, I think our offense should be fine.
Okay, so you're just liking the offensive stuff. Urban, what was your thoughts on Mike McCarthy and retaining him and the trajectory for next season, knowing he is coaching on that 1-year deal, man?
Yeah, no, I definitely like it. Apply a little pressure to him. It never hurts. I mean, it happened with Jason Garrett, actually. A lot of people forget. As long as we strung him along in Dallas, he was up for a contract twice. The first time, obviously, we extended him. Second time, that was it. But I think pressure is definitely good. I also want to say, I think Mike's obviously the offense kind of speaks for itself this year. I'd like to keep that continuity going with Dak for sure. But then as well, I think he's had some weird challenges, especially kind of on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, you look at kind of the combination last year with some of the Zeke stuff and David Pollard, and it's kind of hard to make some of those choices, especially with an owner like Jerry Jones. And then secondly, kind of this year, I think it's kind of gotten overlooked is actually Jeff Blasco, who's kind of the run game coordinator, was out with illness issues early on in the season. And then we had, really a lot of offensive line injuries and kind of tweaks there that were going on throughout the season. And I think that really put a damper in some of the run success. But as you saw kind of down the stretch at the end of the season, last few games, Pollard looked a little better. I do think we should still move off him, but I think a lot of that had to do with kind of the offensive continuity and being healthier, and then having Blasco there too as well help contribute kind of to the overall offensive production. So definitely number one, I like him coming back. I don't want to mess with things. He's got a good thing going. But then obviously to the run game, I think we can fix with a new running back. And then a lot of those offensive linemen are just going to continue to improve a little bit. And then last, I think too, a little bit that's kind of maybe been a little bit of a pain is I feel like maybe he's a little bit scared to step on Dan Quinn's toes because of kind of the weight he has, with his contract and Jerry keeping him around so long. As you've seen kind of the Shanahans, get in those defensive meetings. It's a lot harder to do that with Dan Quinn and say, hey, how about we do this? Because, he brings a lot of cachet with him. So I think if he leaves, that'll actually help overall too. Just him really being able to get hands-on and manage the team.
Okay. Yeah, for me, if I had to put my 2 cents in here, didn't hate it, didn't love it with the Mike McCarthy keeping him kind of thing. Truthfully, I feel like we should have. I think that we've been doing this. Let's just put it this way: we've been doing it with old coaches or guys that have been around the Cowboys organization for too long. We did it with Bill Parcells bringing in another coach. That didn't work out. We've done it with Jason Garrett. He was a friend, a former quarterback for the Cowboys. stay. I think he was 10 years as the Cowboys head coach or something crazy like that. Kellen Moore is
10.
the offensive coordinator. Now Mike McCarthy. I just want somebody refreshing that's completely new. Not another poached head coach. So not another Bill Belichick or not a Mike Vrabel. I wanted a new guy, a Ben Johnson, a Bobby Slowick, a Mike McDonald's, one of those guys that are in a coordinator role right now, but have the potential to really catapult your offense or your defense if you went with McDonald. So I don't hate it knowing that if this did happen, if they fired Mike McCarthy, they probably would have went after a Belichick or a Vrabel. So I'm kind of indifferent about it. I guess the continuity with Dak Prescott in that second year of the West Coast is a good thing. But overall, it's kind of like, how do I? It's almost like the Jane Slater question. Like, how do we as fans put our trust back in you, knowing that you failed not once, not twice, but 3 times in the playoffs, back to back to back, after these good seasons where we felt like, hey, we're 12-5, we're one of the best teams in the league, and we've fallen short again. So it's one of those things, man. It's wait and see, I guess. Second question I wanted to propose to everybody here in the chat as well is, do you feel like the players believe in Dak Prescott, and do you yourself still believe that he can win it all for the Dallas Cowboys?
Me personally, I say yes. I believe the players believe in him. I believe they believe in him 100%. Like, he's one of those, like, in the movies where it seems like everything's down and they got to give the fiery speech. Like, Dak's rallying them, like, yeah, man, we might die, but we're gonna die together. One of those type things where the players like, we're gonna run through a wall for him. And it showed up in the season. I mean, last year everybody dogging him. Oh, he's an interception machine now. He sucks. His thumb's messed up. We need to get rid of him. And he was legit in the MVP discussion from week 5, the San Francisco game, all the way up until the end of the season. He was legit in the MVP discussion.
Well, I think
As much as
sorry to interrupt you. I think he
okay,
still
go ahead.
is a little bit. I mean, he's probably
Yeah,
going to get some votes at least. I think he's probably
exactly.
going to be runner up. So, to your
Yeah,
point, yeah.
and with like for instance, I'm a big Romo fan. I was a big Romo fan. I'm a big Dak fan. Romo was never in MVP discussions. As good as he was, and as much I liked him, he was never in MVP discussions. Dak is in a legit MVP, not a we're trying to build him up. Like, he was legit in the MVP discussion. So I think the players really believe in him. They gravitate to him. They see how hard because he's not a natural passer, a natural everything. You can tell he's somebody who has to work extra hard to be as good as he is. Like, he's not a natural passer like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. So he has to work harder than others to get where he is. And they see that. They see him put in the hours to work. He's not just skating by on his talent. And so I think that resonates with them. And so that's why I think that they really believe in him. I still believe in him. I think he can get us there. I don't think he was the reason why we lost. He was part of the reason in the last game, but as far as overall, I don't think he's the reason. I think he can still get us there.
Yeah. And his first all-pro nod. So
Yeah.
coming in this season, and he has another year with Mike McCarthy to build up that resume and build the comfortability inside of that West Coast offense. So,
And I don't think
CJ,
Romo had an all-pro nod either. So sorry, Evan.
no, you're good. CJ, your opinion on this subject?
Yeah. So I definitely think the team is still behind him. I think they're behind him just as much as they're behind Mike too. I don't know if anybody noticed on Twitter when it was announced that Mike was returning. I think it was Jake Ferguson and someone else who had posted a video of Mike with the chain on that one time and stuff.
I think that
Like,
was
they
Wozniak.
love Mike McCarthy. Yeah, they love Mike McCarthy. They love Dak. So they're definitely going to be behind him, and I definitely think he's going to be the one to get it done. He proved this year that he can be in those same conversations as the people that the Stephen A. Smiths and everything said he can't be in a conversation with Josh Allen and all those people. So, yeah, I feel like he's the guy. And to Richard Sherman's point that he said on Undisputed about if we do move on from Dak, who's going to be the replacement and who do we, like, I just feel like we should still have the same confidence in him we did all year.
Okay. And Urban?
Yeah, I'm definitely a Dak believer, but definitely more like 8 out of 10. But mostly just because, I mean, it's the obvious. I mean, he's really just B+ quarterback, which is great. I consider him right underneath. If you go in tiers, Mahomes, maybe Burrow, pretty much now it seems like. Lamar, name a couple others, but whatever, you get the point. But after that, I mean, those dudes, we're not getting an early pick unless we blow the team up, and we're not going to be competitive next year unless we extend them so we can sign and bring in more talent. So I definitely kind of believe him. He just needs a little help. You got to treat him like a B+ quarterback and not expect him to just be Patrick Mahomes. That's why there's only Patrick Mahomes, and he lives in his own category.
Yeah.
And overall, I mean, I think the team believes, but there's just definitely, I think if anything, maybe they're a little, I mean, I don't know how it is being in those locker rooms, but maybe they're in his ear, whether they're going to say it out loud, but just kind of, take a little less money, be a little team friendly, take a little bit of, the old Tom Brady deal is kind of what I would go with, so we can go out and get you that Derrick Henry and then get that early running back pick to really solidify some of those offensive woes that can really boost us up a little bit, and maybe even retain a Biotish or go get a better center or something along those lines. So,
yeah. And my guy from All Even Podcast with Barry Grant Jr., he says regular season is not the issue with Dak. It's the playoffs. CeeDee Lamb tried to wake him up in that game and saw early he wasn't there. It's a concern to give him $50 million per year. Right now, he's on the last year of his deal, and he is due $59 million. What's your guys' opinions on extending him, adding void years, which would have to be okayed by Dak Prescott? You can't really trade him unless it's okayed. He has a no-trade clause, so and it doesn't seem like any of you guys want to trade him, but what's your opinions on that, and where would you go? Would you let him kind of be on that Mike McCarthy chain with, hey, this is your last year to prove it, or we're moving on from you, or what's your opinions? We'll start with Urban again.
Yeah, I mean, if we put him on that 1-year deal, to me, you're almost forfeiting next season because I feel, we're not going to be able to go out in free agency or retain certain talent in order to build the team up stronger going into the next season. So I think really the only way is to you got to be willing to extend them, even if you're stuck, doing the 50 million. Maybe you can get them down to 40.
Let me interrupt
But
you
then
for
as
just a second. Let's say that the Cowboys went to Dak Prescott. I think he already has 2 void years on his contract right now. Let's say that they said, hey, we're trying to build up the team around you, but truthfully, this is where we're at. We're not ready to give you that extension even after the All-Pro year. You just didn't play good enough in that playoff game. Will you accept 2 more void years? We can spread out the cap hit over the next 4 years. So even if you're not on the team, we'll still be paying you. It just helps us this year. And then whenever you reach free agency, we can't franchise tag you. So if you want to re-sign here, if you have that season, you can, or cut your losses and move on, like Tad Prescott apparently wants his brother to do. So I'll propose that kind of situation for you, Urban. Keep on going with your point, though.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely okay with keeping him long term. Definitely okay, because I think we're in an interesting space with him where it seems like you kind of go back and observe the tail end of Romo's career before he really took over because of injuries. And then Dak, he's kind of at this pinnacle where it seems like mentally he's figured out the game. Pre-snap is, Aaron Rodgers actually talked about it on the Pat McAfee show where he's in full control when he gets to that line of scrimmage and knows where he's really going with the ball and seems very deliberate. But then the second, really most important part is that he's healthy. It seems like he still has his health and everything. Whereas Romo, he started having those collarbone injuries and then, the back injuries.
Yep.
So I definitely think, there's a chance Dak could actually improve going into next year just because, quarterback, that mental game just means so much. If you know where you're going with that ball pre-snap, much like how Tom was able to dominate even at an old age, whether it was in Tampa or the tail end there in New England. But I think there's definitely a big chance, I wouldn't be too quick to cut our losses with Dak. But then especially if you look at the draft even this year, this is the year for quarterbacks. So, let's say we blow it up next year. There's no telling, Shador Sanders is going to be, available for us or if he'll even work out in the NFL. But, I mean, I look around at the draft this year and I'm looking at 5 potential starters. It seems like they might be franchise quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And there's always a couple sleepers and busts and stuff. But I think it's a strong class, and we're missing out on it because we're too good. So
Yeah, I think you make a good point, Urban, about Dak just getting better. And we saw, based on his press conference, and the things that he has to say after games about, I don't know how I played quarterback without doing it the way that Mike McCarthy has taught me how to do it for this long, like marrying the drops and 3 steps, 5 steps with the route concepts. That stuff has changed his rhythm, and he doesn't have to think as much as a quarterback. They took away him calling out the protection at the line. Obviously Dak is never going to completely get away from that. He sees stuff and he tells his offensive linemen, but they primarily put that on Tyler Biadash's shoulders. And I think that it's helped him, and we saw it this year. That was his best year as a pro. So it was so good at sometimes, but then the playoff game was so it's one of those, it's almost the same question, like how do you feel knowing that you're 2-5 in the playoffs, and how does that belief with the players around you get stronger, knowing that you haven't made up for the deficiencies on the team, whereas a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow, I won't even say Joe Burrow because he kind of got carried by the Bengals defense that Super Bowl run, but some of those elite quarterbacks like a Tom Brady makes up for those things. Prescott, we'll let you answer the question as well, man.
Yeah, so I don't think it's any ways that goes for that deal. And I wouldn't either if I was him. I'm like, hey, y'all give me everything because I believe he's earned it. Like he's earned it based off what he's done for the team. So me personally, I wouldn't, but they have to. Like it's not even a question. They have to extend him. There's no way they can have him 60%. I mean,
Yeah.
$60 million. It's like, and then again, with how the cap rises, it's not really the number. You can't be like, I can't pay him 50 million. It's really what percentage of the cap he takes up because it goes up every year. It goes up so much. So really, it's what percent, and it's like a magic number. They said somewhere around 16 to 18% of the cap is what a quarterback.
I think it's projected to be 16 million more next year.
Okay, yeah, and so it's what percentage of the cap the quarterback takes up. So if you say
yeah.
50, that sounds like a lot because we used to pay quarterback 30 million like 4 years ago, but the cap has gone up so much that 50 really is what 30 was 4 years ago. So that
I
50
have the
million number is
numbers.
not really a number.
Sorry
Okay,
to interrupt you. I do have the numbers. If you're going to let him play on the 59.4 million this year, that would be 24% of the cap for the Dallas
and that's
Cowboys.
too high. Yeah, but they said that the magic number is somewhere around 16 to 18%. The quarterback should be that much. And then unless you're Brady and you have a billionaire super wife, you can take 14% of the cap. That's different. But there's no way they can let him play at 60 million. But I have no problem extending him. And even if we have like a couple void years, sign him like where he gets it front loaded first 2-3 years where he gets the most of the money, and then the other 2 years or 3 years they haven't signed for it, like voided years. I would do that, but they have to. Like, there's no way they can field a competitive team paying him 60 million. So they have to do that. Like, I don't have a problem with extending them though. But like I was watching, like what CJ was saying, Dak has gotten better every single year. He's not like a Zach Wilson where he had a good year and regressed, or he got injured, he regressed. And like he said earlier, CJ, when it was like, all right, if you got rid of Dak, what do you do? Who do you replace him with? Like, it's a crapshoot. CJ Stroud looked really good in college. And I'm not saying he's playing the best he could ever play, but he looked terrible this year. You could think you're getting a stud. Nobody thought Stroud was going to be a stud, but he ended up being one. So it's like you just never know with quarterbacks in the first round. So it's like if you have one that you even remotely think he can get me to a Super Bowl, you have to hold on to that guy until he just clearly isn't that guy anymore. And I don't think Dak is clearly not the guy anymore. I think he still can get us there. So it's like you got to weigh those options. Yeah, let's throw away this, but what are you going to replace it with? You got to have one. And unless Trey Lance is the second coming, then we're just screwed.
Yeah, Prescott, you said CJ Stroud. I think you meant Bryce Young at the beginning of that statement.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Just
Bryce
correcting you,
first,
so nobody misses it in translation.
Yeah.
I want to get this question off the top before I forget it, and then we'll go to CJ for the last portion of that question that I proposed. But this question, somebody remind me, or CJ, you take it right off the back of the other answer. Do you think that Jerry Jones fumbled the bag trading a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance, knowing that they were almost backed up against the wall and having to extend Dak Prescott? I want somebody to remind me of that, or CJ, you just take it after you answer the other question. Go ahead, man.
So I'm gonna answer the original question first. The extension, I do think it's a good idea. I agree with everybody. Like Prescott said, you absolutely have to. I mean, it's the only way we're going to get him that help that Urban was talking about. Like, he really needs it, and we have to extend him so we can do that. And I feel like Dak. I feel like Dak is easy to work with. I feel like he wants to win. He wants to be a Cowboy. So if they approach him like, we need to do this so we can get you that help, he'll be down for it. I honestly feel like he will. So the extension is definitely necessary. And I'll let somebody else take this next question.
Well, let me get my thoughts out on Dak Prescott. I think that all you guys nailed it. They had to extend, or they have to. They haven't done it yet. They have to extend Dak Prescott just because if you let him play out this year, you have zero power over him at all, and you already have barely any power over him. I mean, I think he wants to stay in Dallas. He's about to start a family. And I think that he genuinely loves every single guy in the locker room. He's a leader. He's a guy that you want to see, lift up a Lombardi trophy sometime in his career. Now, whether that's expecting more out of him or trying to build better teammates around him for his deficiencies, that question will get answered in the future. But you have to extend him. You don't walk away from a top 10 quarterback, somebody that I believe is a top 7 quarterback. So I think that, he doesn't have the trade clause. He doesn't have, you can't franchise tag him, and you don't want to lose him for nothing. So you have to extend him. Prescott, why don't you take the Trey Lance 4th round pick question?
Yeah, I did not like that at all. Only because I believe we could have gotten him for much less, like 6th round. I think they would have taken anything. I think Jerry was bidding against himself. Then with this team,
so what you're telling me is that San Francisco 49ers beat us twice this year.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the way we've been drafting 4th rounders between, Tony Pollard, Dak, I think Osa was a 4th round, I think. But we've been doing pretty good.
No, I think Osa was 3rd. Jake Ferguson was the 4th, though.
That's right. And Jake Ferguson was a good one. No, Bland was 5th round.
Yeah, Bland was
5th. Yeah, Bland was 5th. And so we've been doing good drafting 4th round. Like, to me, as crazy as it sounds, we would have done better giving up our 2nd rounder since we waste those anyway. We would have been better off giving them our 2nd round and keeping our 4th, because we draft better in the 4th round. But I absolutely hated that. Not skill wise, I just think that was too much to give up for him. He might end up being a good quarterback. I have no idea, but I think right now that was just too much to give up.
Falcon says, not true. Minnesota was calling and had offers for him. So did Baltimore and a few other teams. Jerry just happened to offer the 4th while others were offering a 5th. Yes, I could see Minnesota. Yeah. Minnesota, especially after Cousins went down, and now he's a free agent. So I could see that definitely for Minnesota. Okay. Baltimore's a little strange, but who knows? Regardless of the situation, I think that I won't answer it yet. I'll let you guys go. Sorry, Urban, go ahead.
I think I'm actually the odd man. I don't think it's a horrible decision. I don't necessarily like giving that a pickup, but on the positive side, I guess I'll be the devil's advocate. You can view it as basically just pressure on Dak. He knew kind of going into his contract situations, and it's kind of something similar. Although McCarthy wasn't involved in any bit, but kind of similar with Green Bay when they brought Jordan Love in when Aaron Rodgers was still there. And he went on to have some pretty good seasons too while Jordan Love was still there. So I think a little bit of pressure that's kind of being applied to Dak that I think could really just be a positive thing, because now going in the offseason, even if you extend them, there's still a way out and moving on. If this team ends up having to get blown up by the end of next season. And basically talking, I guess it's Trey's turn, what's the worst that can happen, and just kind of sell Dak off and leverage it for whatever you can get for him at the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Before I forget to say this, because I'm absolutely horrible about this, please do leave a like on my YouTube if you're on that side. I always try to say it at the end, and it seems like people pop out too quickly. So do leave a like if you're on that side. CJ, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's not terrible. I feel like it's something that could benefit us later, maybe for like trading or something like that. But yeah, I feel like it's cool. Nothing too crazy. Pressure on Dak too, like Urban said. And yeah, I just feel like nothing really to bat an eye about.
Okay. For me, I think that I do a lot of scouting and watching stuff. I won't claim I'm a guru or anything like that. But day 3 of the draft is kind of known as the scouts draft. And that's why I think that the Cowboys get some good depth pieces in there is because they trust and they lean on their scouts a little bit more so than coaches in those later rounds. And so, yeah, it's one of those things, man. I kind of wish that we had that pick, knowing that Trey Lance is so raw at the position, anyways. Um, I mean, he has less total passes in high school, college, and the NFL combined than um, probably Patrick Mahomes through this year. I know for sure as a fact he's has less passes combined in all 3 of those levels than Geno Smith threw last year. So it's one of those things, man. We're gonna have to figure out what we have in him, and that's kind of a coaching fumble as well. Not getting him in some of those games where we were blowing out teams and um, I just wish that we would have been able to see him beforehand. So if there was, some good with him, you could use him as trade bait, like CJ said. But right now it's really an unknown, and like somebody else alluded to earlier in the draft, this is a deep quarterback class. I mean, it has some really good players. You might see as many as 4 up to 5 quarterbacks in the first round. So we'll have to see, but overall, I didn't like that decision as much. My guy Falcon, which I got to shout out, he's a day one follower of my channel, says, I'm only going to leave a like if EJ admits we go for Blake Corum in the draft. Um, hey, man, I made the prospect alert of Blake Corum. I thought that was enough for you. Hey, 3rd round, I'm on the Blake Corum train. 2nd round's a little rich for me. But on to the next question. What's everyone's opinion on Dan Quinn as the DC next year? And what does your gut say happens with him? Do you think he leaves for another team, or do you think he is the defensive coordinator for us? We'll start with CJ.
Yeah, Dan Quinn. I do want to see him go. I'm not gonna lie. The teams that he's interviewing for, I feel like most likely one of them is gonna take him, and if they do, that's good. We can get somebody else. I think I'm not quite sure who's out there, but I know there's some really good people who can fill in that role for us and just give us something fresh on the defensive side. And yeah, that's all I gotta say about Dan Quinn. I don't want him to be the defensive coordinator anymore.
There you go. My guy Urban, he actually earned a follow. I'm weary of following people on Twitter just because you never know if they're gonna have a fan account or a personal account where they're posting weird stuff on there. So he actually earned a follow from me because of his take on a defensive coordinator. So I'm gonna throw this one to him and let him shout out his next up and coming DC that he wants to see with Dallas, man.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm like everybody else, it seems like ready to see DQ go. Definitely, really not even just this year where it kind of came to a head, but I mean, really since he's been there, stopping the run has kind of just been a habitual thing that's just sort of been an issue with us kind of just getting gashed at times. But really, the guy, I'm really looking at and kind of penciled in is Mike Pettine. He's currently on staff with the Vikings, but he's an old school kind of football head, I guess you could say. He's been around a while. He was DC with the Jets, kind of when they had Revis Island going. So it was really a top defense when Rex Ryan was there. But then before then, kind of early 2000s, he was actually the Ravens linebacker coach. So he's been around some strong linebackers, can immediately, imagine having him in the ear of Micah Parsons talking football and talking about what Ray Lewis used to do and some of those other studs, on that defense as a whole. And then, I mean, he actually coached the Browns too, kind of failed coach, but he was squeezing there before they drafted Menzel. So I don't hold it too much to him because no one was successful in the Browns during that time period. But he actually, Kyle Shanahan, McDaniel, and LaFleur were actually all part of his staff when he was a head coach. So maybe having a little bit, having been around those brains might help a little bit, definitely as far as schematically goes on the defensive end, and knowing kind of their personalities. And I'm sure they're drawing up all kinds of plays that, he might have said, don't run that in the game. They're all finding success with now. So he might have a little bit of beat on some of those Shanahan tree guys as well. And then really, I mean, I just think he could help our linebacking group a lot. And then, our secondary, keep Witt in place, keep Al. And this is kind of more going with the mindset of just going all in for next season. And I don't see him as a guy that's really looking to be a head coach again. I think he's comfortable just being an assistant or DC or whatever kind of brain, in any front office or in any coaching room.
Yeah. My guy Falcon brings up some good names here. He says you could either go with Joe Witt Jr. or Harris if DQ does leave, or worst case, you get a Wink Martindale or a Mike Vrabel to come coach your defensive side of the ball. So some good names by him. My guy Kai001 says, I was packing DQ's bags after that playoff game. He's been showing his weakness and his stubbornness to change his scheme down the stretch. Absolutely correct, the linebacker thing, and then playing just way too much dime and nickel packages. But we'll roll over here to Prescott on his opinion on this.
So, man, I've been thinking about this so much. It's all I've been thinking about since we lost the game. So it's like I'm a big DQ fan. Like I said, a lot of you guys are newer fans, but I just remember the time when our defense was just terrible. Like our linebackers was leading the team in interceptions with like 4 or 5 for the whole season. Like we didn't have a defensive back getting interceptions. It'd be Sean Lee or Bruce Carter or something weird like that.
Jeff Heath. I
And
think Jeff Heath
yeah,
led us like 2
and
years in a
Jeff
row.
Reed. And I'm like, I remember those days when we had no idea if a team was going to score 30 or 40 every single game. So I was happy when he got here, takeaways, holding teams to under 10 points on a consistent basis. So I was happy with that. And with that being said, if he got a job, I would drive Dan Quinn to the airport tomorrow. If somebody offered him a job, I'd take him myself, because he's one of those old heads that's my system works. We just got to play it right. And like he just switches up at the wrong time, like in the playoff game. We're primarily man-to-man press team. But for some reason, in the whole first half against Green Bay, he decided to play zone, and it infuriates so many people just running wide open after you've been playing man all year. Little stuff like that. It's like, you're an experienced coach. You've been to the Super Bowl. Like, how could you make that rookie mistake in a playoff game? And it's like, I'm so torn because what he's brought a whole level of confidence to where I'm like, man, our defense, when it's on, is on. But when they're off, and he just doesn't want to change. But what I was really hoping for was that they would be so pissed off at Eberflus that they would have let him go, and we could have picked him up as defensive coordinator. But they decided to keep him for one more year. He was great when he was our linebacker coach, and then he went to Indy, and now he's with Chicago. But I really wanted him. But I wouldn't mind a Vrabel, and I wouldn't mind a Wink Martindale. I don't think our guys are ready, Harris or Witt, but you never know until you get put in the shoes. So they might be good, but I think we should go at least one more year. If I were hiring outside, you got to get a coach who thinks that, hey, I could possibly take over for Mike McCarthy if he sucks this year, like Vrabel. He could be the coach, and then we can pull up a Witt or Harris after they've had another year of seasoning under a different coach.
Okay. My guy Kai says no in-house, please. We're gonna just keep that same mentality. So, who knows? I think that I'm kind of leaning on Dan Quinn's gonna leave for Seattle. I just feel like that's I just feel like it's written in the stars or something like that. I could be wrong. But it is what it is. If he stays, it's another year of continued the same kind of press man on the outside, and you're asking Diggs to come back off of an ACL and play in phase with receivers and mirror them and jam them at the line. I don't know if I love that for him. So who really knows? I guess we'll find out here in a couple weeks. But the fourth question I had for tonight is, if I made you the GM of the Dallas Cowboys today, what are 3 moves that you would make to get to the Super Bowl? And you can go free agency. You can go with if you want to get crazy, you could say I'm trading Micah Parsons. I mean, I don't know if anybody's that crazy, but I'm just gonna leave it free reign. Obviously, has to be kind of set in reality. You can't say I'm gonna throw Tom Brady 50 million to come out of retirement. So set in reality, some moves that you would make right now. We're gonna start it off with CJ.
So right off the bat, extend that, right? And then if Dan Quinn doesn't get hired somewhere, I probably would part ways with him. And then I would look for someone else, maybe make Al Harris the DC, something like that. And then after I extend Dak, probably restructure Zach Martin again and some of those people. So then I would go after Derrick Henry, maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire from the Chiefs. Who else? It was one more person I was thinking about.
Patrick Queen's out there.
Yeah, Patrick Queen's out there. That would be great. Oh, Geno Stone is out there.
Yep.
I would definitely try to get some of those guys, and yeah, just I would definitely work on the defense the most.
Okay.
Try to get some good linebackers in there. We definitely need some more run stoppers and things like that. So yeah, that's what my focus would be on if I was the GM.
There you go. I like that. Prescott.
All right. So first of all, I mean, you got to extend Dak. That's number one. That's the number one thing they need to do is extend Dak. I would focus on the defense as well. I would either find in the first round, the best either off ball linebacker that they have out there, like blue chipper, or offensive lineman, someone who we can either
in the first round is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the first round. Then we have to think about what we're going to do with the contract of CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons. We have to back up the Brinks truck to both of them because they're both all pros. So those are top 3 contracts that we have to focus on. Dak, Parsons, and Lamb. Those 3. Find out who's going to replace Dan Quinn. And in the draft, I would say, and depending on what we can get in free agency, like if we can get Patrick, because if you look at the teams that are still in there, man, the good linebacker play, the Roquan Smith and Patrick McQueen of the Ravens, and then they have the Fred Warners and the Greenlaws of San Francisco. Like they really showed up and they really shut down the middle of the field. We need one, and I don't think LVE is coming back as much. Man, I hope he does, but it's not looking good. I think he's going to end his career because that neck thing is, me personally, it's too serious to play with the rest of my life just to play one more year probably. So I don't think he's going to play anymore. I hope for a miracle, but I don't think he's going to play anymore. But I think that they're going to look for, I mean, their top priority to me is linebacker when it comes to draft or free agency, whichever one comes first. If they can get a good one in free agency, then they can scoot back in the draft and get another one later, or vice versa, get a middling one in free agency and then get a blue chipper in the first, second round in the draft. But that's number one. Stop making safeties into linebackers that just get swallowed up whole and get killed all the time. And then offensive line needs to be fixed. I wish we could get Callahan back wherever he is. Jerry, if you listen, I know you listen to EJ's show every day. So if you're out there listening on the yacht, please call Callahan and mend fences. Give him whatever he wants to come back and coach our line.
Yes,
and
please.
That's probably what I would do. And I think that would be a good foundation to start building our team back up.
There you go. No, I like a lot of what you just said. Urban?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely, I think number one is just sort of, it's going to be an interesting one I'm going to throw out that's kind of different. I think bringing back Armstrong would actually be a really smart move. Part of that is if you actually look at the numbers, he plays about half the snaps and still, I think, finished with over about 5 sacks. So potentially, if you move into more of a starter role, he might get up to 10 sacks.
He had 7.5 this year.
Sorry?
He had 7.5 this year.
7.5. There you go. Even better. So and then, that gives us more flexibility to play with Micah and move him off ball more and help really solidify, our linebacking core if needed to move him off or just move him back for rundowns and move him back down on the line in passing downs pretty much. Then 2 is just sort of I'm basically mirroring free agency with the draft. I want to bring in essentially, whether it's a Derrick Henry or one of these other Eckler guys. I'm just saying
Saquon is
Henry
out
because
there.
he's the popular name. And then I'm going to draft early in a running back, one of the first 3 rounds. And same thing for the linebacking position. I want to go get a good, solid free agent linebacker, and then reinforce it again in the draft. And especially with the linebacker position, just because obviously we're weak there, but as well, as we mentioned, LVE with the neck injury, Damone Clark had the same thing. And I've kind of noticed too, I don't know if I'm really sold on Clark yet. He's made some flashes, but I've just noticed on some plays where it seems like his mind isn't really firing quick enough to really show off his athleticism at times. During the Green Bay game, I noticed there's kind of a trip set that Green Bay ran to the left, and they motioned Aaron Jones in. He wasn't in the backfield and kind of threw a bubble to him. And if you look at it, if Clark reacted fast enough, mentally and just took off, he actually could have stopped that play and probably got a 1-yard loss or no gain. But it's just kind of one of those small things where there's a lot of games if you really pay attention to him where he might not be much better than what he really is at this point, which is hard to say so early on in his career. But just kind of wondering about some of those things where it never hurts to bring in some more of those linebackers. And then last, just kind of throwing out another curveball. I'd be willing to, give up one of our safeties for another pick or something, or maybe swap for a different position as well. Just because if you look at that group, I mean, there's so much talent there between, Wanye Thomas. Obviously, I'm pretty sure everyone's in agreement. Curse won't be back, but Malik Hooker has just been solid and consistent, all year long. Donovan Wilson. And then even kind of Israel Mukwamu, who's actually played well in spots, coverage in the slot as well. So kind of depending how things shake up, what do we keep? Jordan Lewis in the Gilmore situation coming back with sort of our cornerback room. I might look to move off some of those accordingly to kind of fit around that safety room and just kind of be able to have another tool to kind of get more talent in the room. And I didn't even think about Marquise Bell too, who's actually a safety, not a linebacker like Quinn likes to think he is. So,
yeah, I want to pick out one point that you made about Damone Clark not being like the mental side of things. His mental clock and deciphering what the offense is trying to do isn't fast enough. And you saw that actually get worse and worse the more that he played without LVE. So if I was going to make one move, I would get in a veteran. I think like a Levante David, somebody like that. That is a veteran guy that can work alongside Damone Clark and really build him up and allow him to play free so that he's not always trying to decipher everything and then communicate that to Marquise Bell, or if you're going to leave him, of course, there at linebacker. So, I think there's a lot of free agency moves you could go out and make. If you want to get a Patrick Queen, he's a younger guy. If you want to go all in and go get somebody that's a big name, you could possibly get Chris Jones. I don't think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to run it back with him. I just don't think that they have enough of the pie for him. So it's one of those things, man. If you can get one of those blue chip talents on your team, especially cutting your losses with Mozzie, getting that guy in Chris Jones who gives you the pass rush and gives you, the run defense, I would go for it. So. And then that starts with extending Dak, like everybody else mentioned, and then restructuring some of your key contracts that you feel good about in the future. So, number 5, what current free agent that played on the team in 2023 would you feel most interested in re-signing, in some names that you think are okay to leave? I'm going to read them off to you real quick so you guys have the names. So Tyron Smith, Tony Pollard, Stephon Gilmore, Jordan Lewis, Dorrance Armstrong, Jaron Kearse, Dante Fowler, Noah Igbenogany, Jonathan Hankins, Trent Siege, Chuma Edoga, Neville Gallimore, and Rico Dowdle. We'll start with Urban. Oh wait, did I say Tyler Biotish?
No.
Oh no, I didn't even name off 16. Sorry, Tyler Biotish, Sean McKeon, and CJ Goodwin. I didn't scroll all the way down. I was like, Tyler Biotish should have been on there. Go ahead.
So Jordan Lewis is on that list, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I'm going with Jordan Lewis. Just based off how he's played coming off an injury. and really it's just, I mean, it is so hard to have a really secure and consistent, guy that can play in the slot at corner. I think that's one of the hardest things, especially, Diggs is sort of coming off the injury. So we'll see, it might take him 10 weeks before he starts turning things around if he ever does. And even then, Gilmore's only getting so much older. He's probably, even if we brought him back, he might be banged up half the season and kind of reach that point of his career because he's pretty old for a corner, although he still balled out this season. But, we got to start living in reality at some point too as well. So for me, I think it's definitely Jordan Lewis. I mean, plus, I mean, he's pretty physical for a corner. Out of all of them, he's really not afraid to stick his nose in there and get a little bit dirty. I mean, he forced a fumble against Christian McCaffrey against the Niners, which was pretty awesome. But for me, it's definitely Jordan Lewis because he's kind of the piece that ties it all together. I mean, even if you have Bland, that means maybe we're moving him in a slot. Then we're back in that Anthony Brown situation where teams are just throwing the ball to him all game and just ignoring our other corner. So I definitely got to go with Jordan Lewis.
Yeah. I mean, for all the hate on Michigan players, Jordan Lewis might be the best Michigan player on our team. So I like that pick. CJ?
I agree with Urban. Definitely would bring back J. Lou. Definitely would bring back J. Lou. I would bring back Hankins. Maybe Gallimore. He's pretty good when he's hot. And I think I'm cool with everybody else walking, to be honest, even Tony Pollard, because we need somebody different. If we do sign him back, we would need to. I feel like we still need to worry about getting another running back just so he can take a back seat a little bit because he's way more better coming off of the bench, as we saw last year with Zeke. So, J-Ron Curse, tired of seeing him. And all those guys could walk really. Hankins, J. Lou, Gallimore.
I think Tyron Smith, you bring him back?
Yeah, I'll bring him back. I feel like he's essential just as a veteran.
Tyler Biotish?
No. Respectfully, no.
Rico Dowdle?
Nah.
I think the other bigger name is Dorrance Armstrong.
Yeah, I forgot all about that. Yeah, definitely bring him back.
Okay. And Prescott?
So I'm a zag a little bit to the zigs, but Tyron Smith, if he would come back on a team-friendly deal, I would definitely bring him back. As long as he understood, hey, you're going to be a swing tackle. You're going to be one of the backup guys. You're not going to be our day one. We're just playing you until you eventually get injured. Like, no, we're going to have you in there to play. And I like the running back from Wisconsin. If we could bring in somebody like him or Derrick Henry, I would definitely bring Tony Pollard back. I would not bring Pollard back as a number one. If he's like, well, I want to be a number one, then you can't come back. If you can agree to be the Pollard to Zeke like you were the last 2 years, then yes, I would bring him back on a team-friendly deal. The third one would be Dorrance Armstrong. I think he's very, very underrated. He produces a lot of numbers under the radar. He doesn't have huge seasons, but he never has disappointing seasons. We're like, man, Dorrance Armstrong only had 1 or 2 sacks. He's always in that 5 to 8 range every single year. So I'd bring him back as a backup to everybody. And I know everybody in here is loving J. Lou, but I'm not a fan. I'm like Bob Stern. I read his stuff, and I can't take credit for this saying, but he always calls Jay Lewis a really good cover corner that can't cover. So he plays corner, but he does everything good except cover, especially drags or slants or whatever. He cannot cover those to save his life. And that's what they keep seeming to run him into. But when it comes to run support, when it comes to toughness, when it comes to somebody who has grit, is going to put his nose in there to tackle every single time, he does it. And I love him for that. But we have linebackers for that. So he doesn't need to come back. We can get another slot corner somewhere. But Gilmore, maybe. Like, it depends on the money he wants, because I don't think Bland is a good slot corner. I think he's a much better outside corner. So if we had, of course, if Diggs was here and Gilmore was here, Bland would move into the slot, and he really wasn't doing that well until Diggs got hurt, and then Bland blew up. So I would rather Bland play on the outside. So Gilmore isn't a necessity, but if he came back, I wouldn't be upset. But all the other ones like Biotish, Hankins, I believe we can get another Hankins somewhere. He's good, but I believe he's not easily replaceable, but more easier than the other guys. Like people like McEwen, Dowdle. Yeah, we can always replace those guys. But if I had to pick a top three, I would say Tyron Smith, Tony Pollard, and Dorrance Armstrong. Those would be my top three.
Let me look at these names real quick. I think I'm going to go Tyron Smith, especially with you keeping Mike McCarthy. This tells me that you're going to try to go at it again. So I would bring back Tyron Smith. I think I would probably bring back Dorrance Armstrong just so you're not pigeonholed into taking a defensive end in the draft early. And then, truthfully, a lot of these other guys could walk for me. I guess I would say the long snapper Trent Siege is my number 3 pick, which is crazy to say, but whatever. The guy's funny on Twitter, so I guess he'll earn a spot on my team. Yeah, I think that. Oh, you're getting a little bit of hate in the chat right now, Prescott. They said Bland is the best slot corner in the league. They said Bland is way better in the slot. Two people are saying that. So, anyways, yeah, I think that those guys, for the most part, I would be willing to walk from Neville Gallimore, Jaron Curse. Pull the names up so I just Gilmore. I think Tony Pollard, I guess. I kind of do like the pairing between Braylon Allen and Tony Pollard because they're such different backs. Allen's 6'2", 245, and I really think that you could have him in the 4th or 5th round. And he's only 20 years old, so he's very young. A solid player. Obviously needs to get better in the pass catching department, better in the pass protection department as well. But he's a guy that has a great build that you can work upon. So I do kind of like that pairing. Moving on to the 6th question, which I guess that kind of, a lot of you guys already answered that, which was which player are you most willing to let go? But I add the caveat under contract or not. So you can pick somebody that's under contract, like a Michael Gallup, who's kind of on the outs right now. I'll start with, I guess I will, since we already said the free agents, it has to be somebody under contract that you have to let go. We'll start with Urban. Oh, his dogs are barking. So okay, we'll move to Prescott.
All right. Let's see. Man, Gallup is the easy one.
There you
sure
go.
is the easy one, but it's like, yeah, he's just like Tolbert just supplanted him. I mean, even the other guy, what's the other wide receiver that started playing late in the year? Even he started taking snaps from Gallup, and for the amount of
Jalen
money we pay
Brooks.
him, yeah, Brooks, that's it. But for the money we pay him, I'm pretty sure we can get a quality draft pick for him. So he would be the one that I would probably say, let's move on from him if I absolutely had to. But other than that,
I'm gonna throw out some names so we can have
yeah.
a couple names out there for people to talk about. Sam Williams, obviously still on a rookie contract, but just because I said let go doesn't mean that you can't trade him.
Yeah.
That's a name. Leighton Vander Esch, who knows with the neck injury, you can cut ties from him. Donovan Wilson is a decent cap hit. And he didn't play all that great until the very end of the season. I know he was dealing with a couple injuries. Josh Ball, I don't know why he's on the team. I call him Josh Can't Ball because he just doesn't seem like he can play. Going down a little bit more. A lot of these guys are way down the depth chart, so it really wouldn't make a difference. And you're not going to move. I guess Cooper Rush is an option if you want to roll with Trey Lance.
Yeah.
So those are some of the names that just what I'm seeing right here. Of course, Michael Gallup is the other big name. So CJ, out of any of those names?
Definitely Gallup makes the most sense. I feel like we could get something good for him, especially if we throw in some other things in there with him. So yeah, Gallup would be the number one for me. Get something good from him.
You think that they have that Gallup has trade value?
Oh yeah, I feel like there's a few teams that could use him as a 2 or even a 1. Really, to be honest with you, because he is good, but we just don't really need him. I'm not gonna lie. So I would trade him to see what I could get with him.
Michael Gallup, I'm gonna go to his contract 2024. His cap hits 13 million. The next year it's 15 million. I don't know that any team is gonna trade for that just based on those numbers. He doesn't have the
Chicago
production.
will.
Yeah.
Chicago will. Let them have it.
Yeah.
Chicago? I don't
Yeah.
know, man. They got
See,
DJ
I
Moore.
agree.
They got
I
Darnell
always say
Mooney. They
Gallup
got
is
some.
good for Gallup
Uh,
is good for quarterbacks that move around, and he's good at extending the play. Like he's not a good initial route runner, like like an Amari Cooper or even a CD Lamb. But
okay.
once the play breaks down, that's when Gallup value goes up. Because if you notice, most of his bigger plays happen when Dak moved, slid out the pocket, backed up,
It's a
and then
broken play.
he would hit Gallup. Yeah, and so like for
Okay.
someone like a running quarterback is what I was thinking about. I don't want to see him go to the Eagles only because I hate him and they should destroy Philadelphia as soon as possible. But he should go to someone like I believe Carolina needs any wide receiver they can find in this world.
Okay.
Maybe KC, maybe Chicago. Like those would be my top three, and I think that he would bring value to them. But that number is real high, that 13 mil. Ooh,
I
that's a lot.
think if you were to trade him, you would have to kind of have a Texans Cowboys Brandon Cooks kind of a trade where you have to eat some of the cap.
Yeah.
Urban.
Yeah, it's definitely Gallup like everyone else. It seems like. But I think if they cut him, I believe if they designate him for
June
June
1st.
1st, it saves like 9.5.
Yeah, I can get those numbers up real quick just so we know.
And I kind of value that as let's go get Derrick Henry.
Yeah, if you cut
allocate
him
that money to our running back.
Yeah, if you cut him, you're due 4.3 dead money, but you save 9.5 million, and that's a post June 1st cut.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I
that's
mean, because
running back money.
Even if we keep him, I see it kind of an issue just from the standpoint. It seems like as you saw Tolbert start getting a lot of those snaps, even Jalen Brooks got in the mix a little bit. He really flashed in training camp, but we were just kind of deep at the receiver position. But I don't really see a huge need for him. It kind of goes, a little bit to kind of my issue with Deuce Vaughn, where I've, talked to a lot of people, they want Deuce Vaughn, and it's like, well, we can't bring him in to play 5 snaps at max. When he's not going to run down on kickoff, he's not a returner because we have Turpin. So, in my opinion, I'd rather just save the money and allocate it to a running back. I mean, even keeping Dowdle will be better than that, giving him some of that money just because he can go run down on special teams or block, on a wedge or something. But with Gallup, you're just kind of you want to see him get less snaps, and we all want Tolbert to get more of those. And I'm interested to see Jalen Brooks and maybe something pops with Martavius Bryant as well too. So could get real interesting, especially saving that money. I really just want him gone. So
yeah, I think that obviously I would cut Gallup. I would also cut Cooper Rush. I don't think that he has a spot on the team if you're going to roll with Trey Lance. You already invested in him. You have to almost roll with him as your QB2 next year. I might look at trading to Sam Williams. He might have some value. Obviously, you're not going to get a second round pick back for him, but an extra fifth. I don't think that the Cowboys have a fifth right now. So, if you can pick up picks, like I said, that day 3 is the scouts kind of day of the draft, and we can get somebody in here that's good. I really love this kid out of Colorado State, Muhammad. I think he's going to the Shrine Bowl, which is, if you're in Dallas area, you should go to that. That's next Thursday. Chance to see some of the prospects. But he reminds me of kind of that same build of a DeMarcus Lawrence, a run stuffing guy that gives you a lot of aggression off the edge. So if you kick out, Fowler, and you re-sign Armstrong, then you have that spot to go out and get somebody else in the draft. So, who knows? But those are my big 3 names that I think I would move off of. And then this is my final question that I had for this, exercise, I guess, the fan form, and then we can kind of go into off the top questions or take some stuff from the chat as well. So what positions do you feel are the biggest concern for the Cowboys heading into the 2024 draft? And with those, positions that you feel, would you like to see them use some early draft picks? I assume a linebacker's big on everybody's chart. Would you care if they used a first round pick on a linebacker? So we'll start with Prescott down there.
No, I implore them to use a first round pick on a linebacker, blue chipper, like whatever the best one is. If they picked one, because at the time, I had no idea who. I mean, I'd heard about him, but I had no idea who Michael Parsons was. I didn't know he would be Michael Parsons, so I was indifferent about that pick, and I was like, I trust in Will McClay. He knows what he's doing. A lot of picks I didn't like, and they turned out to be great, so I trusted him on that one. But I would want them to get a linebacker, or not. I would never want a first round running back, but that would be my top choice.
Yeah, I don't
A
think
running
that.
back, but not first round, but linebacker. And if they can get a really good offensive tackle that slipped, I wouldn't mind that, because I never want to see Chumi Doga play football for the Dallas Cowboys again, unless he turns into steel. But Chumi Doga, man. Anyway, so I mean, he probably can beat me up, so I'm not gonna say anything mean in the cake. And I live in Dallas, so he might come find me, but I don't want him to play tackle ever again. But offensive lineman and linebacker, those would be my top two positions to get in the first round. Either one of those, I'd be fine with.
Yeah. I will say that this draft is very deep on tackles. Running backs, I don't have a first round running back. Most of my running backs are cheater grades, which is a 2-3 grade. There's no Jahmyr Gibbs, there's no Bijans in this draft. But Urban, go ahead and answer this question from your side of things, man.
Yeah, I pretty much, agree with Prescott. Definitely linebacker is what I would have penciled in number one. But I definitely would be open to being flexible. If one of these tackles comes along that just looks like he's a stud and kind of falls back, I wouldn't be scared to go ahead and grab him. Especially with, we don't need to talk about Tyron Smith. Everyone knows, to beat a dead horse with his injury history. And really, I kind of feel pretty good about a lot of the interior of our offensive line kind of moving forward. Not that we have crazy stars or anything, but some of those guys, kind of filled in, I would say, pretty decently and continue to
Hoffman
grow.
and TJ Bass. Yep.
Yeah. Brock played, he looks like he might be a player, and that's another option to slide too at center too with him. But yeah, I see the tackle as the bigger kind of need. And then especially, if we get to a point where we just put the best talent out, we can kick Tyler Smith back out if we need to at tackle as well. Is it just kind of another little insurance policy, but definitely linebacker. And I'll say running back too, kind of again with the caveat of that good offensive lineman, and then just kind of the O line for kind of third. So linebacker, running back, O line, but of course it all depends too as well. What splash do we go make it in free agency as well? Because that changes things as well. Just the obvious. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. With your comment about Tyler Smith possibly being pushed out to tackle, that reminds me of a point made on the draft show, the Cowboys draft show today, that was talking about how the last year's draft, the 2023 draft, focused way too much on players that had position flexibility instead of being good at one thing. You talk about Mozzie Smith, you talk about Schoonmaker being a blocking. Oh, he has receiving quality. Mozzie, he's really good at run stopping, but he has that pass rush upside. Third round, Overshown, he had some safety, some linebacker flex. Then you go to Fahoku. Oh, he can be a 3-tech. He can be an edge rusher. I almost is like, I like that they have that position flexibility, but I kind of sided with Nick on the draft show when he was talking about just get me the best players, man. And so I'll drop it off here to CJ to finish this up.
Yeah, I agree with everybody. Linebackers, definitely see if we can steal a tackle off there, a good solid tackle. See if Jalen Wright from Tennessee is available. I would like to get him for a running back position. And I wouldn't mind getting a linebacker in that first pick at all. That would be very helpful.
Okay. Nobody's going wide receiver here?
No.
Man, I kind of
I
feel
think
like the Cowboys are need a wide receiver. Truthfully, you got 1 year left on Brandon Cooks. You don't really know what you have in Tolbert. CD Lamb, you don't have him locked up. Obviously, you probably are going to. Um, but I think of the philosophy of kind of the Green Bay Packers. You would like to draft the guy before you need them than when you need them, kind of a thing. So I wouldn't mind drafting a day three wide receiver that can come in and compete. So a third round wide receiver would be a-okay in my book. Obviously the linebacker, obviously the tackle. Running back running back is so dependent on free agency because I do feel like there's some good running backs in the free agency class that aren't going to get re-signed. You talk about Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. Both of those guys are probably not going to their teams. I know Derrick Henry isn't. I assume that Saquon is done in New York. So one of those things, I think that we're probably going to get one of those veteran backs. Kai says they took CD's 5th-year option, correct? Yes, they did. I think they're on the books for like 17 million with that 5th-year option being picked up. Josh Jacobs is another option from Kai, is what he said. I'm going to open it up to Prescott's question that he had for the entire panel, and then chat. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them real quick, and then we'll try to answer those as well before we pop off of here. Go ahead, Prescott.
Yeah. So one thing I've been noticing about uh, the Dallas Cowboys for the past few years, for the longest time, we were America's team when we won those Super Bowls, and it's what it's what I like to call the Cowboys tax. Y'all ever heard of that before? When the Cowboy tax is how they treat us from outside, like when it comes to one aspect of it is when we play other teams. It just seems that teams get up for us. Like they play their very best
Mm-hmm.
game against us. We create superstars. Like I still remember when last year we played the Packers and Christian Watson just destroyed us. And after that, he had a few good games, but that was his very, very best game ever. And it seems that always one person decides to have their best game against us. And then, of course, it bleeds into the media to where they even finally admitted it this year to where they cover us different because, hey, y'all bring the clicks, y'all bring the likes. And so it's like, how do y'all
Mm-hmm.
perceive the Cowboy tax? Is that something that's real or is that just in my mind?
Yeah, go ahead, Urban.
I mean, I definitely think there's definitely a lot of truth to that. It's no wonder we're the number one, richest sports franchise in the world. And then especially just kind of the compounding effect when you got a guy like Jerry Jones running the show. He's very similar, really, in a lot of ways. If you think of the Lakers with Jerry Buss, where he was just kind of this vibrant, flashy guy. Even though Jerry's case a little different, with the Southern charm and everything, but he definitely likes all lights on us, glitz and glamour. I mean, we got the star that's just this beautiful piece of property. Almost like some of these crazy college universities and all their recruiting tactics. I almost, to a degree, want to see some of that old school Bill Parcells show up this training camp and let's take everyone's stars off their helmets and make you earn it again. And let's cut some of the media and documentaries. Let's get the cameras out, which of course is part of, Jerry as kind of the ringleader and keeping cameras on him and getting on 105.3 The Fan, and then teaching his son Steven how to do the same thing with his other radio show.
Yeah.
It's just, I wouldn't mind seeing Micah not on his podcast this season, coming up.
Yeah.
So just like cut out a lot of the crap that just kind of surrounds us. Stop bringing extra attention, just be gray, man. As gray as you can, even though you're Dallas Cowboys, but just be gray.
Mm. Yeah, I think Jerry's getting that Netflix money. Actually, I think he signed up for some
Yeah.
documentary series. So,
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen in the next year, but we'll see. CJ, what was your opinions on the star tax or the Cowboys
Uh,
tax?
yeah, I definitely think it's real, and I think it's obvious. When it comes to us in general, people just act out. You can see it in the media. LaShawn McCoy, Stephen A. Smith, they act out every time something happens.
Mm-hmm.
When we play teams, George Kittle with the F Dallas shirt, all that. Nobody else gets all that treatment, So I definitely feel like that's real. People just act out when it comes to us. And I agree with Urban, like Micah Parson with the podcast and Jerry Jones doing all this extra stuff. It would be helpful if we could stop all that and actually focus on winning. So, yeah. That's what I have to say about that.
Mm. Yeah, I will go ahead and just say I think it's evident that it's a legit thing. Media's came out and said it, like Urban said, and Prescott said. It's one of those things that we kind of just have to live with. It comes with the territory of being that most hated team back in the '90s. You know, that won those three Super Bowls, and they had the triplets, and everything was all Cowboys coverage, and now we don't get to reap the benefits of being that team. You know, we're not that dynasty that we once were. But with all that pressure, you know, it makes diamonds, like they say. You got to be willing to come and you got to be willing to work. And that brings me into the second question, or the question that the chat brought up, which is just stop taking these guys to Oxnard, make them have a training camp in that Texas heat. Am I the only one that wants to see the fundamental changes? um, which is basically just saying like stop treating these guys like divas, like superstars, like they're football players. Allow them to work for their contracts. Allow them to work for their fame. If they're just because you have a star on the side of your helmet doesn't make you be worthy of being famous. Like you got to actually earn that stuff. And kind of like Urban was saying, like Bill Parcells taking the star off of the helmet and making them earn those things. It's one of those things that I would like to see. um, Now I don't know about that. I was planning on going to Oxnard, maybe to training camp this off season and checking it out. But if it's in Texas, obviously it probably isn't. But if it was, it'd make my trip a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I kind of agree with that. I kind of like that thought process is just change some stuff up. You're not willing to move away from the coach, so you got to have some fundamental changes and kind of take a book out of a Bill Belichick's or a page out of Bill Belichick's book, and be willing to get a little bit harder and you know, call out some people, even though you are a player's coach, Mike McCarthy. CJ.
Um, yeah, I definitely agree with that. We definitely, like I was saying before we started the show, just the culture of the team in general, like things need to get a little more harder. Playing things like playing in the heat and the star thing that Bill Parcells did, that stuff really builds character and makes you a dog, you know? So I definitely feel like things like that should happen just to give our players that dog in them a little more.
Prescott.
Yeah, I agree too. And with the recent changes to the rules in the NFL, didn't make it any easier because they had to cut out a lot of the extra practices
Hmm.
they had and how many times they can practice in pads. So it even made it even worse. But you're right, like they have a thing where, I wouldn't say the players feel entitled. It's just that they know it's not going to be as hard as it should be. So when they face adversity, some people just don't know how to handle it because they never had to go through any of that. It's like we were talking earlier about uh, the penalty situation. It seems that we had a bunch of penalties, and it's been like that for the past 3 years. To where under Mike McCarthy, penalties just don't seem to be punished like it used to be. Man, I'm telling you, like I'm older than a lot of you guys. And I remember back in the day with Jimmy Johnson, he would have picked some random scrub and he would have cut him in the middle of the week and said, "Retire the penalties," like a sacrificial lamb type cut to show I'm not playing anymore with you guys, but Mike McCarthy's not going to do that. It's like, oh yeah, we'll make up for that and it'll be all right. And he's a player's coach and I don't think he has to do that. Like they have to create a more, disciplined culture is what I believe
Yeah.
is what we need to have. And the practicing in Texas in the heat, that would be one of those things to show we're being more disciplined, we're being more tough nosed, because you've seen some teams like a Tennessee or a Cleveland, like Cleveland all of a sudden has the best defense and they're like nasty and dirty. And I'm watching the Green Bay game against the 49ers and they were all up in their face and they were just barking, talking like, people you've never heard of talking noise and getting in their face. Like when the guy hit Lamb on an out, Lamb just hung his head and walked back. And I'm like, come on, man, you got to fight back. You got
I
to
saw,
act like you
I saw
care.
that.
And that just infuriated me. I'm like, there's no way somebody could hit Michael Irvin like that. I mean, they might have to arrest him on the field for what he did to that DB after that. But it's like little stuff like that you can just tell that we're not weak. We're just not as strong as we should be.
Mm. And Urban, did you want to touch on it at all?
Yeah, definitely think. I mean, the big thing is we just need a little more attitudes. I mean, we really miss that Dez, that Michael Irvin kind of just lighting people up, getting in their grill. If anything happens, not backing down, attitude. Not being afraid to fight, maybe be a little dirty after the play. If you think of, a great guy I like to look at is Greenlaw on the Niners. He's got a little bit of that nasty, that little bit of craziness that you might get thrown out of the game at all times. But, some of that toughness that really shows, hey, we're here to protect. We've seen Ferguson have a little bit of that wild man to him, but we need some more to go along with that too.
Absolutely.
I was under the impression that we were going to get that before the season started. I'm not going to lie. All the videos of Trayvon Diggs going back and forth with Dak and all that stuff going on, I was under the impression that that's what we were finally going to get, but I guess it didn't translate. So,
man, we need 3 or 4 more D-Laws and 3 or 4 more Fergs on both sides of the ball, and we'll be all right.
Yeah. I just got a question from my guy AJ over there at Cowboys Can Fan. Said what attitude players should the Cowboys kind of target in the draft and stuff, and I think it's just those dogs, those guys that don't have a switch to turn off, that they're always going, whether it's an offensive lineman after the whistle blows, they're still trying to drive that defender into the ground, or whether it's the defense, they're still trying to drive that offensive lineman into the ground. So it's just those guys that don't have that switch that they have to turn on. They just are always like that. Those are the guys I want to see. I'm gonna have to cut it short, guys, because I do have a meeting with another guy, part of the Grid Network. I got to go do. But guys, it was such a honor to have you guys on and just talk some ball, man. I love meeting more Cowboys fans and just talking with guys that really, breathe this stuff and just want to see the Cowboys finally succeed after so many years. And the drought's 29 years now. So it's one of those things. We got to find a way to get over it. I'm going to let you guys shout out your socials one more time. If you are on the YouTube side, please do leave a like, subscribe to my channel. If you're not, set that notification bell. We do a show every Tuesday night. This is the fan forum where I bring on fans and we discuss. I'm going to try to do a little bit more of these during the off season, but it's really fun, man. Appreciate all these guys coming on. So Urban, pop in here and just say your parting wishes, man.
Yeah, I appreciate all the time. And if anyone wants to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at the Urban Cowboy on Twitter. Pretty simple. Just looking forward to everything. Hopefully, the Cowboys finally bring it home for me in my more adult life. So, yeah.
There you go. And Prescott.
Oh yeah, so y'all can follow us at the Victory Formation podcast is at VF Pod BTH on Twitter. You can always search us for them. And we have YouTube, Instagram, all that too. But at VF Pod BTH on Twitter to see when we post. We just started brand new pod. Probably got about 3-4 episodes on there. So we're not seasoned as EJ, but we're gonna get there one day.
Oh man, I'm still learning on the fly, man. Don't even sweat it. You guys are awesome. CJ.
Big Nasty Official, all one word. Instagram, Twitter. I make
tell them where they can find your mixtape, bro. Come
on.
Yeah. Plug
you can
it.
find my music on anything: YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, whatever you use. You can find me on there. On Twitter, I'm really active during the season, so you'll get a lot of funny tweets and stuff like that during the season on Twitter. And go Cowboys.
There we go. My guy Falcon says, EJ, one last thing. Blake Corum. So hey, on that note, we're gonna end it. Appreciate you guys so much for getting on the show, and we'll be here next Tuesday, or well, I will be. Hopefully you follow these great guys. So peace.
All right, man. You gotta take it easy.